Now, I think it's pretty safe to say that the future of the Star Wars franchise seems to be ever evolving and expansive by the hands of Jon, George, and Dave, given that they are working on a handful of other projects between, of course, different eras of the post-Return of the Jedi material, as well as Old Republic material that's coming to light. We'll talk about that a little bit later, as well as post-Episode 9 shows, or one show in particular that's currently in the early phase right now. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now, the great thing about Jon and Dave right now is that they're not only focused on those points in time, but they're also focused on basically everything that happens after the events of the prequel trilogy movies and exactly how they can craft that into a series and more. But when it all comes down to George Lucas and exactly what's been going on with Kathleen Kennedy, we're going to be going over every single piece about what is actually happening behind closed doors recently involving both Lucas and Kennedy and what kind of big decision Bob Iger and the executives recently had to make to ensure the productivity of a specific Star Wars project. Now, with that being said, alright, we know that Kathleen Kennedy has been not only causing a lot of drama and toxicity in, of course, the environments of Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte, everything ranging from the sets to the workplaces to the employees, everything around it has not been good on their end. There's been a lot of reshoots, a lot of rewrites per actual show, and Disney is not happy with Kathleen Kennedy in the slightest. It's not looking good for her right now. So, bring us back to George Lucas. What's really exciting about all of this is exactly what Disney recently decided to do with Kathleen Kennedy. Now, with Disney and Lucasfilm preparing to make big changes at the company, it's described that as of right now, Disney executives are right-sizing the number of Star Wars projects for the roadmap and are gearing up to make drastic alterations for the better. Now, recently, George Lucas just replaced Kathleen Kennedy for one of the upcoming Star Wars projects that will be announced at D23 later this year. It's noted that Lucas is going to be taking over Kathleen Kennedy as a producer for the upcoming Star Wars Underworld project that has been in early development phase for at least the past couple of months, as Kathleen Kennedy has been in control of the budget for the series. With Disney lately fatigued over Kennedy's mistakes with the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew, they have decided to allow Lucas to come on board as a producer to handle the revival of his original live-action Star Wars TV show that was supposed to release back in the late 2000s. With Lucas now taking over as producer, which will be officially announced in 2024 sometime, Underworld is aimed to be a 2025 release for Disney+. Now, let me just stop here for 1 second. I don't know if you guys know what in the world I'm talking about, but Star Wars Underworld is basically a mixture of basically Star Wars and Blade Runner. That's probably the simplest way to really put it of exactly what the Underworld series is going to really be about thematically and, visually speaking. The other side of this is that it's going to be a very dark and gritty Star Wars show, really focusing on the criminal underworld, criminal organizations, bounty hunters, Jedi in hiding, everything around those lines, to really kind of give fans something very unique that we have never seen before. Now, there is leaked test footage of the original Underworld on the internet. Go ahead and look it up, type up Star Wars Underworld test footage leaked. It's very interesting stuff. It's basically what George Lucas was working on back in 2007. It was aimed to be an actual sequel to Revenge of the Sith, taking place after Order 66, and the same exact thing goes as follows for the revival of Underworld with this project that Lucas is now taking over as a producer. So, moving on to the next big thing here is that they are going to be getting experienced writers and directors to handle this series, with Jon and Dave serving as co-writers for Underworld in some of the episodes. So that's very interesting, is that they're going to get a large, diverse amount of writers, a lot of experienced writers on board, a lot of different experienced directors, stuff like that, that's really going to just kind of give us something that we have never seen or actually experienced before in the franchise. That's what they really want to do. Now, on to the next big thing about all of this is that additionally, the goal here by Disney is to allow Lucas to also hold all the creative capabilities for the show that will serve as a true sequel to Revenge of the Sith. Kennedy is now leaving the project after being fired by Disney executives as a producer from the show after her failed attempts with the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew, and shows a sign as the beginning of the end for Kennedy's time at Lucasfilm, as they are still aiming to fire her entirely by August of this year. Now, about that, guys, real quick, is that they want to really kind of see what happens with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny first, quick, and that's most likely why they're waiting it out until August. And I highly doubt the movie's going to be a blockbuster hit. I really doubt that. I'm not being pessimistic or negative for no reason. It's just going by what we have heard with the reshoots involving Indiana Jones 5, as well as some of the endings getting changed and switched around, the ending sequences specifically, I should say. And it's just stuff like that, similar to what happened to Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, that leaves you a little skeptical about how this movie is going to turn out. Now, anyways, on to the big thing here is that this, of course, Kennedy is reportedly very furious over Disney's decision to fire her as a producer from the series that will now be run by George Lucas entirely to ensure the show will be a quality-driven series and the proper writers to come on board helping Favreau and Filoni on its direction. Bob Iger is the one who made the final call to fire Kennedy from the series, as it is going to be a very complex show to handle. Now, again, a lot of people don't really know anything about, Underworld, because it's one of those series that sadly never made it far into production. We only got test footage with the original one, and this one is only in the early development phase. It's a very new thing. They're trying to get this thing out by 2025, the earliest, and if they run into any kind of setbacks or delays, it could even be later. But I think that when you look at stuff like this, when you look at everything of what John and Dave have been attempting to do and how they got George Lucas back on board, and now George is replacing Kennedy as a producer for Underworld, it's really going to show us a telltale sign of the positive direction of Star Wars and where it's all going. Now again, we know that Ahsoka right now is being aimed at as becoming the new flagship or the main series over The Mandalorian for several reasons, because basically Disney wants to focus on a different show entirely, mainly for a couple of years now, after Mando 4 and stuff like that. First you're going to get the first season of Ahsoka, Mando 4 after that, next year, and then Ahsoka Season 2 is when it's going to be established as the new flagship show. That's basically Disney's game plan. So anyways, guys, I would really like to hear what you guys have to say about this whole big shift over at the Underworld development between Kennedy losing her position as producer with George taking up the role, and how main writers, and experienced ones by the way, will be coming on board. Guys, fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about that, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Night to moon, we hear them moans again.